You are listening to the DITA Strategies Podcast, Episode 1. Today we're talking with Amber Swope about the company and how DITA Strategies can help you. Let's get started. Welcome to DITA Strategies' first podcast. I'm Allison Yilderock, and with me today is DITA Strategies President and DITA Specialist Amber Swope. To dip our toes into the podcast waters, we thought we'd start off by telling you a bit about DITA Strategies and how we can help you. So Amber, why did you start DITA Strategies?
Thanks, Allison. Well, the short answer is that I was laid off in July of 2008, and there were no positions available for information architects or consultants, and so I started my own company. The long answer is that there's a need for many folks to have guidance while implementing their information architecture and specifically DITA. And so 9 years later, here we are, still doing the same thing.
Why did you choose the name DITA Strategies for your company?
Although we do a lot of more generic information architecture tasks, the reality is the bulk of the work that I do is around helping folks implement DITA. And so I felt that the company name should reflect what I do.
A lot of people listening might be new to DITA. Can you explain what DITA is exactly?
That's a great question, Allison. DITA stands for the Darwin Information Typing Architecture, which is an open standard supported by OASIS. And OASIS stands for the Organization for the Advancement of Structured Information Standards, not the band. And it is an architecture. So I'm going to walk through the pieces of the name. So Darwin is to represent the fact that the standard can evolve. You can extend your support that you need from the base model, and the DITA Open Toolkit, which is the processing engine that goes along with the standard, will be able to process the elements that you have created from the base, which means that if you have unique requirements that no one else has, then you can still use this standard and extend it to meet your needs. Information typing is the idea that all information has a purpose. And out-of-the-box DITA has structured units for content. The base content types are task, concept, reference, troubleshooting, and glossary. Each one of these content types is structured, and it allows you to know when you open a file what it is you're going to get, which goes a long way to supporting reuse. And finally, architecture. DITA is not a tool. It is not vendor specific. It is an architecture, which means that it has a framework, but you decide how you're going to implement it. One of my favorite sayings is the good news is that DITA is an architecture, and the bad news is, wait for it, that DITA is an architecture. You have to make decisions about how you are going to use it because the standard supports multiple ways to get the same result.
What are some of the reasons folks might consider using DITA?
Anyone who has content needs to be able to use that content in flexible and potentially new ways. Lots of folks adopt DITA because they want to have a neutral source. Because DITA is an XML architecture, it separates the content from the formatting, which means that instead of applying a specific formatting type, you instead semantically identify the content. So for instance, if you are referencing a document, rather than formatting it in your original source language, you instead would use the cite element. This frees your content to be able to be formatted in whatever way a citation to another resource needs to be formatted depending upon the way in which the user is accessing the information and potentially the language into which the information is translated. So this means that if you have a neutral source, you can support multi-channel publishing, which means that you can have the same information that goes to your LMS, that goes to your mobile app, that goes to your web portal, that goes into your PDF, that goes into your slides, or any other output format that you need for your content.
Amber, you've been in the industry for a long time. How did you become a DITA specialist?
That's a great question. You don't see that as a job title very often, right? Well, I was an information architect at Rational Software when we were acquired by IBM. And we were single sourcing our content in HTML in a very painful way using Excel spreadsheets and Perl scripts. When we were acquired by IBM, we went immediately hunting for their XML because we knew they had to have it. And they did. They had a beta version of DITA, and we implemented it immediately. We, of course, then 6 months later had to re-implement it because we had never done this before, and we made mistakes that we learned from. And so that was my first experience with DITA, and I've been helping teams to adopt it ever since. The true success for implementing DITA is understanding your business requirements and having the information architecture to support them, along with the technology to help folks create and publish the information in the way you need to.
You mentioned information architecture. Can you explain what that means?
Well, there's lots of different definitions out there if you search for this on the internet. A lot of them are very web-centric. So my personal definition for information architecture is that it is the practice of organizing, structuring, and labeling information, which includes content, data, and metadata. This means that it provides the foundation for empowering your user experience because you are managing your source to provide consistency in your deliverables.
Based on your experience as an information architect, who can benefit from information architecture?
Well, as an information architect, of course, I think everybody can benefit from information architecture. And I can justify that statement. Content needs to do so much more than it used to. Back in the bad old days, all we had to do was write a book and put it out. That's not what content does anymore. Content has a life of its own. And if you want to future enable your content to be able to meet the needs of your users in whatever language or experience they have when they encounter your content, you have to think through that. You have to understand, well, how do I structure my content so I meet my users' needs? What metadata needs to be there so that they can find it really quickly? In order for that to happen and for it to be successful, you have to understand what success looks like. That means that you need to start with understanding your business requirements, which should be focused around what your customers need and your consumers of your content really want from that experience. Interpreting those requirements into the information architecture, and that means understanding the design of the content and the deliverables, which mechanisms you're going to use to reuse your content, and also what metadata has to be there to enable that optimal user experience. And from there, you go and say, oh, okay, in order to deliver this content, what kind of technology do we need? And once you have created the technology support, then looking at the process and saying, well, how do we continue to do this consistently, which means you have a guidance, you have instruction, and then you have governance so that everyone continues to produce the content in a consistent manner that meets your end users' needs. Notice that I did not say, oh, you start with buying a tool. Lots of folks think that you have to start off with a piece of technology to have content success. I believe that the right technology is very important, but that is not where you start.
Amber, where can folks find out more about DITA strategies, DITA, and information architecture?
Well, a lot of the information that's available for information architecture is very web-centric. They're talking all about the delivery mechanisms. And of course, I think that information architecture starts much further back in the process and encompasses a lot more than simply its delivery. So we have a resource sheet up on ditastrategies.com. You can also look at the DITA Technical Committee information up on the Oasis site. The DITA Adoption Committee also has a lot of great resources up on Oasis. And if you do a search in Google, you're going to find all kinds of useful pieces of information about how to implement DITA.
Thanks, Amber. Be sure to visit DITA Strategies and follow DITA Strategies on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook to join the conversation and stay updated on helpful articles, podcasts, events, and other resources. Thank you for listening to the DITA Strategies podcast. We hope you'll join us on the next episode.